Hello, I'm Susan Woods, your Black Lives Matter fraud investigator. Thank you for your time. I'm still talking about the Form 990 information return that the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation submitted in 2020. We're on part 2, which is the signature block for the Form 990 information return, and I'm going to share with you the red flags that I've identified. So again, what is the Form 990? The Form 990 information return, or Form 990, is an annual report the IRS requires all 501c3 nonprofit organizations to submit to provide information about revenues and expenses for the prior year. The type of Form 990 nonprofit organizations submit depends on the type of nonprofit organization and the amount of revenues and assets the nonprofit organization has on record. Form 990s are due by the 15th day of the 5th month after the fiscal year ends. For example, if the fiscal year ends on December the 31st, then the Form 990 is due by May 15th the next year. The primary purpose of the Form 990 is to demonstrate transparency and accountability. If the nonprofit team fails to file the Form 990 for 3 consecutive years, the IRS automatically revokes the 501c3 nonprofit status. And it is very important to note that even if you're not offering any services at all, and you're not generating any revenues at all, you still have to file the appropriate Form 990 information return so that the IRS does not revoke your status. Like I said, we're going to talk about part 2 of the Form 990 information return for the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation 2020 fiscal year. So part 2 is the signature block, and this is the location on the Form 990 information return where the representative from the nonprofit and the accounting firm that provided or completed the Form 990 sign to ensure that they are promising the information is correct. As a matter of fact, here's the statement. Under penalties of perjury, I declare that I have examined this return, including accompanying schedules and statements, and to the best of my knowledge and belief, it is true, correct, and complete. Declaration of preparer other than officer is based on all information of which preparer has any knowledge. Now, I want to say that last sentence again. I'm going to read the last sentence one more time. Declaration of the preparer, other than the officer, is based on all information of which preparer has any knowledge. And what that means is the preparer of this Form 990 can only use the information that the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation's team gave them to prepare this Form 990. As a person who has a 501c3 nonprofit organization, I know what it means to have an external CPA audit our nonprofit organization. And again, they can only create a Form 990 based on what they are provided. In our case, we provided bank records. They requested all the bank records for our nonprofit organization so that they could audit the bank records to make sure that our transactions were in compliance with what a 501c3 nonprofit organization should be doing with the money. But guess what? They didn't know whether or not I had another bank account someplace else. They didn't know if we had 3 or 4 bank accounts someplace else. They only went by what we provided them. And that was information from the only bank account that we had. So again, this lets you know that the preparer can't be responsible for information of which they have no knowledge. So let's look at what's going on with the red flags here. The first red flag that I identified, okay, is again, the CPA is Kay Vollins. Kay Vollins signed off on this Form 990 information return on May the 12th, 2022. Now, what year is this Form 990? 2020. So she signed off on it 2 years late, which means the Form 990 was submitted late, okay? Remember, the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation didn't even have its own 501c3 designation until December of 2020, okay? And that came about because they were under so much pressure to be transparent with the $90 million they generated. So they came up with this 501c3 nonprofit organization very quickly because over the years they had been using fiscal sponsors to manage their finances. So Kay Vollins is a CPA. She signed off on this Form 990 information return representing her firm. But the red flag that I've already identified is the fact that she's only using the information that was given to her. She has no way of knowing if there are other bank accounts or other money someplace else that's not being provided to her. So that's red flag number one. Red flag number two is, again, the Charlamagne Bowers situation. Now, he is the board secretary as of the filing of this Form 990 information return. And note that he is signing off on this information return 1 day after it was submitted. 1 day after the CPA submitted the form, he signed it, stating that it was accurate as far as he could determine. That's unusual, especially for a Form 990 that's reporting $79 million. That's very unusual. And I've already pointed out that Charlamagne Bowers is the same person who the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation paid a consulting fee while he was serving as the secretary of the board, which is a conflict of interest. So that's a second red flag that Charlamagne Bowers, the board secretary, is signing this 63-page Form 990 that explains $79 million 1 day after the CPA provided him with the document. So, who is Charlamagne Bowers? Well, here he is. This is Mr. Bowers here. Charlamagne Bowers is the founder of Bowers Consulting Firm, a fully integrated political consulting firm whose mission is to support progressive campaigns tackling the biggest political challenges facing society today. He has nearly a decade's experience in developing and implementing community outreach programs and campaigns. He does this work in honor of his brother, Donald. Okay, so this is Mr. Bowers. He is the board secretary of the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation and still is to this day. Reminder, Patrice Concoulous, who was the only board member in 2020, the only executive in 2020, paid the Bowers Consulting Firm owned by Charlamagne Bowers $2,167,894 for consulting services in 2020. The Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation red flags for this section, Part 2, signature block. Charlamagne Bowers signed 1 day after receiving the Form 990. That's on page 1, red flag 1. There's no line corresponding to the signature block information. Kay Vollins, CPA, relies on the information provided. That's a red flag. Total red flags for this section that I've identified is 2. Cumulative red flags. The heading section had 4 red flags. Part 1, the summary, had 4 red flags. And Part 2, signature block, had 2 red flags, according to my interpretation, for a total of 10 red flags so far. And we are still on page 1 of the Form 990 information return for the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation that is submitted for the year 2020, but submitted in 2022. Thank you so much for your time and have a great day. Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me, too fast. Next, we're going to look at Part 3, the Statement of Program Service Accomplishments. Now I can say, thank you so much for your time and have a great day.